The strategic failure of toxic white guilt. The most destructive approach to indigenous advocacy isn't denial, it's toxic white guilt. It transforms potential allies into defensive enemies and centers white feelings over indigenous needs. Speaking as an indigenous person, this guilt-based activism is tactically stupid and actively harms our communities. The enemy creation machine. Telling someone they live on stolen land creates an enemy, not an ally. That person didn't steal anything. They bought a house in the system they were born into. Confronting them with historical guilt they cannot personally remedy offers only shame, not an actionable solution. It's tactically idiotic to alienate the very people you need as supporters. The savior complex pipeline toxic guilt creates the wrong kind of allies. It turns well-meaning people into saviors who perform dramatic acts to feel better about themselves. Their allyship becomes a redemption story centered on their own moral reputation, not our material needs. They'll study indigenous philosophy, but oppose the policy changes needed to practice it. Guilt gets channeled into intellectual appreciation instead of tangible support, displacing indigenous voices. Insidiously, toxic guilt displaces indigenous voices. The conversation shifts from our needs, honoring treaties, funding healthcare, stopping pipelines, to managing white emotions. Our struggles become props for their moral development. This is extraction disguised as allyship, where indigenous suffering is consumed for another's psychological benefit with little practical return. The government accountability gap. This performance of guilt obscures the real issue: government accountability. The U.S. government made promises and broke treaties. It is the government that should be held responsible. Guilt-based activism disperses that responsibility onto individuals powerless to address systemic failures. We need to focus pressure on institutions, not expect individuals to atone for national policy failures. Performative allyship land acknowledgements epitomize this uselessness. These ritualistic statements about stolen land serve no purpose beyond making the speaker feel enlightened. They don't return land, fund programs, or change policies. They are performative virtue signals that allow people to feel like they've done something without doing anything. Utopian fantasies. The broader land-back movement can veer into a utopian fantasy that ignores reality. Reversing 400 years of history is impossible. Many indigenous people live modern, complex lives, blending tradition with contemporary society. We don't need to be saved from complexity. We need sovereignty within our current reality. What actually works? Effective allies aren't the most guilty. They're the most practical. The rancher who helps during cattle season, the church group that fundraises for the tribal school, they build relationships through mutual aid and shared interests, not guilt. They support indigenous sovereignty because they see it benefits the entire region. This is strategic, not performative. It builds power, a better strategy, practical solidarity, ditch guilt for practical collaboration. Instead of land acknowledgements, support specific policies. Instead of consuming our spirituality, contribute to our sovereignty. Ask local indigenous communities what they need, show up for their causes, and use your voice to amplify their priorities. We need partners for the practical work of building political power, not saviors performing their guilt. The bottom line: toxic white guilt is strategically counterproductive. It creates enemies, not allies. Centers white feelings over indigenous needs. Fosters saviors instead of partners. Focuses on individual psychology over institutional change. Promotes performance over practical support. The choice isn't between guilt and indifference. It's between self-centered drama and strategic solidarity. Choose strategy.